I'm about to tell you the most unbelievable story of how my HOA neighbor, Karen Williams, destroyed my 19-year-old son's life by targeting his food delivery job as illegal commercial activity, and how my investigation exposed her systematic discrimination that sent her to federal prison for 8 years. At 45 years old, I thought I had found the perfect place to rebuild our lives after my divorce. Sunset Valley was a middle-class community in Arizona that marketed itself as family-friendly and supportive of young professionals. After years of financial struggle as a single mother, I had finally saved enough to buy a modest 3-bedroom house where my son Miguel could finish college while living at home. Miguel was everything a mother could hope for in a son. At 19, he was a sophomore studying business at Arizona State University, maintaining a 3.8 GPA while working part-time to help with family expenses. He had been working food delivery for DoorDash and Uber Eats for 8 months, earning enough money to pay for his textbooks, gas, and car insurance while still having time for his studies. Miguel was responsible, respectful, and hardworking. He never caused problems in the neighborhood, always parked legally, and was polite to everyone he met. His delivery job was perfectly legal, properly insured, and provided flexible hours that worked around his class schedule. What I didn't know was that Karen Williams, who lived in the house across the street, had been watching Miguel's every move and planning to destroy his livelihood using fake HOA authority and employment discrimination. Karen Williams was a 48-year-old former HR manager who had moved to Sunset Valley 6 months earlier, claiming she wanted to help improve community standards and property values. But it quickly became apparent that her idea of improvement involved controlling what residents could do for work. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday evening in September. Miguel had just returned from a delivery shift when Karen appeared at our front door with her ever-present clipboard and what appeared to be an official-looking badge. "Mrs. Santos, we need to discuss a serious community violation that your son is creating," she announced, with the authority of someone who clearly believed she was in charge of everyone's employment. "Good evening, Karen. What violation?" "Your son is operating an illegal commercial business from a residential property in direct violation of HOA covenants and zoning regulations." I looked at Miguel, who was carrying his delivery bag and car keys. "Karen, Miguel works food delivery. He's not operating a business from our house. Food delivery is a commercial business, and using residential properties as base of operations for commercial activities violates multiple community standards." "Base of operations? He just parks his car here because he lives here. He's storing commercial equipment, conducting commercial activities, and generating commercial traffic in a residential neighborhood. That creates liability issues and violates our community's residential character." Miguel stepped forward politely. "Miss Williams, I just deliver food for DoorDash and Uber Eats. I pick up food from restaurants and deliver it to customers. I don't store anything commercial here. You store delivery bags, GPS equipment, and commercial signage on residential property. You conduct business meetings via phone calls from this location. You're essentially running a delivery service from a residential address. I'm an independent contractor who happens to live here. That's completely different from running a business. Independent contractors are businesses, and businesses cannot operate from residential properties without proper permits and zoning approvals." Karen pulled out what appeared to be an official violation notice. "This is your first warning about unauthorized commercial activity. You have 72 hours to cease all business operations or face escalating enforcement actions." I read the notice, which was formatted to look like an official government document. "Karen, this says Miguel needs to stop working his delivery job or pay $500 in violation fees." "Correct. Commercial activities in residential areas require special permits and compliance with business operations standards. Miguel doesn't run a business. He's an employee who delivers food. He's a contractor who operates a delivery service. The distinction is irrelevant. Commercial activity is commercial activity regardless of employment classification." Miguel was getting frustrated. "Miss Williams, thousands of college students work delivery jobs. It's not illegal commercial activity. It becomes illegal when conducted from residential properties without proper authorization. Someone needs to enforce community standards before this neighborhood becomes overrun with commercial operations." Commercial operations. I drive my car to deliver food. You drive your car to conduct business transactions that generate income from commercial activities. That's operating a business, which requires permits and compliance oversight. As Karen walked away, she called back, "You have 72 hours to comply with community standards or face more serious enforcement actions." 3 days later, we received a second notice that was much more threatening than the first. Final commercial activity violation notice. Mr. Miguel Santos, your continued operation of an unauthorized delivery business from residential property has escalated to a Level 3 community standards violation. You are hereby ordered to immediately cease all commercial delivery activities, remove all commercial equipment from residential property, obtain proper business permits and zoning approvals, pay accumulated violation penalties totaling $1,500. Sign a compliance agreement prohibiting future commercial activities. Failure to comply within 48 hours will result in equipment confiscation, vehicle impoundment, and possible legal action for business operation violations. Miguel stared at the document in disbelief. "Mom, she's trying to make me quit my job and pay $1,500 in fake penalties. Karen has no authority to regulate anyone's employment or collect penalties. But what if she really can impound my car? I need it for work and school." I immediately called Tom Rodriguez, who served on the HOA board, to ask about these commercial activity restrictions. "Tom, did the board approve rules that prohibit residents from working delivery jobs?" "Maria, we've never discussed employment restrictions, and we certainly don't regulate what jobs residents can have." Karen Williams just sent Miguel a violation. Notice demanding he stop his delivery job and pay $1,500 in penalties. She sent him what? Maria, Karen isn't on the HOA board. She's not even on any committees. She has no authority to regulate employment or collect penalties. Then how is she sending official-looking violation notices about commercial activities? She's not sending anything official. This sounds like Karen is making up rules about employment that don't exist. Tom explained that Karen had been causing problems since she moved in, targeting anything she considered unprofessional or lower class. She's complained about landscapers, contractors, and service workers. She seems to think certain types of work are inappropriate for our community. Inappropriate work? She's made comments about service industry jobs and gig economy workers not fitting the community's professional image. That sounds like employment discrimination. It definitely sounds like something the board needs to address. Don't let Miguel change his work based on Karen's fake violations. Despite Tom's assurances, Karen's campaign against Miguel's employment escalated dramatically. She began conducting what she called commercial activity surveillance of our property, photographing Miguel whenever he left for or returned from delivery shifts. When I confronted her about this harassment, her response revealed the depth of her employment discrimination. "Mrs. Santos, as Community Standards Coordinator, I have full authority to monitor and regulate commercial activities that threaten residential property values." Community Standards Coordinator? Tom Rodriguez told me no such position exists. The board granted me emergency authority to address immediate threats to community character caused by inappropriate commercial activities. Inappropriate commercial activities? Miguel delivers food. Food delivery is service industry work that attracts the wrong demographic to our community. Someone needs to maintain professional standards. The wrong demographic? Service workers, gig economy contractors, and minimum wage employees don't belong in a community designed for professionals. Their presence damages property values and community reputation. I was shocked by the blatant classism in her statement. "Karen, there's nothing wrong with honest work. There's everything wrong with turning residential neighborhoods into bases for commercial service operations. Miguel's delivery work brings constant traffic, creates safety hazards, and signals that this community accepts lower-class employment. Lower-class employment? Food delivery, ride-sharing, and gig work represent temporary, unstable employment. That's inappropriate for residents of a professional community like Sunset Valley." Karen pulled out what appeared to be a community standards manual. I've developed comprehensive employment guidelines that ensure residents maintain appropriate professional standards consistent with community values. The document was clearly something she had created herself, but formatted to look official. Karen, you can't regulate what jobs residents have. I can and I will. Community standards require professional employment that doesn't compromise neighborhood character or property values. She handed me an updated violation notice that was even more elaborate than the previous ones. Emergency commercial activity cease and desist order. Miguel Santos, your unauthorized delivery business operation continues to violate community standards and threaten residential property values. You are hereby ordered to immediately terminate all delivery service employment, remove all commercial vehicles from residential areas, cease all commercial communications from residential property, pay emergency violation penalties totaling $3,200, submit employment verification showing appropriate professional work sign agreement prohibiting future service industry employment. Failure to comply within 24 hours will result in vehicle impoundment, equipment confiscation, and possible eviction. Proceedings for commercial zoning violations. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Karen, you're demanding that Miguel quit his job and prove he has appropriate professional work? I'm demanding that residents maintain employment standards consistent with community values. Service industry work compromises the professional character we've worked to establish. Miguel is a college student working part-time to pay for school. College students should find appropriate part-time employment that doesn't involve service industry activities. Tutoring, office work, or retail positions would be acceptable alternatives. Acceptable to whom? To the community standards that I've established to protect property values and neighborhood reputation. Karen's employment discrimination wasn't limited to Miguel. Over the next week, I discovered she had been targeting other residents with service industry jobs. Sarah Mitchell, a nursing student who worked part-time for Instacart, had received violations for grocery delivery commercial activity. David Chen, who drove for Lyft to supplement his teacher's salary, was cited for unauthorized ride-sharing. Business operations. The elderly Mrs. Patterson, who sold homemade crafts on Etsy, was threatened with violations for home-based commercial manufacturing. When word spread about Karen's employment harassment, the community decided to confront her directly. The confrontation happened on a Saturday morning when Karen was conducting one of her commercial activity inspections in front of Miguel's car. She was taking photographs and measurements when nearly 20 neighbors gathered to demand answers. Karen, what gives you the right to regulate what jobs our children have? Asked Sarah Mitchell's mother. I have community standards authority to ensure residential properties aren't used for inappropriate commercial activities. Inappropriate according to whom? According to professional community standards that protect property values from service, industry degradation. David Chen stepped forward. Karen, I'm a high school teacher who drives Lyft on weekends. Are you saying my work is inappropriate? Part-time ride-sharing represents gig economy employment that compromises community professional standards. Teachers should maintain dignified employment that reflects their educational status. Dignified employment? Driving for Lyft pays for my daughter's medical expenses. Personal financial circumstances don't justify employment that damages community reputation. There are appropriate ways to supplement income that don't involve service industry work. The crowd was getting angry as Karen's employment discrimination became more obvious. Miguel spoke up. Miss Williams, you're basically saying that certain types of honest work aren't good enough for this neighborhood. I'm saying that Sunset Valley is a professional community that should maintain employment standards consistent with that status. Food delivery and ride-sharing represent temporary low-skill work that doesn't belong here. Low-skill work? Work that requires no education, training, or professional development. Anyone can deliver food or drive for ride-sharing services. Professional communities should expect residents to have professional employment. Mrs. Patterson, who was 78 years old, had heard enough. Karen, I sell crafts online to supplement my fixed income. Are you saying my work isn't professional enough? Home-based manufacturing and online sales represent commercial activities that violate residential zoning. Elderly residents should find age-appropriate income sources that don't compromise community standards. Age-appropriate income sources? Consulting, tutoring, or administrative work that maintains professional dignity appropriate for residential communities. Tom Rodriguez, who had arrived to witness the confrontation, was appalled by Karen's statements. Karen, you cannot regulate residents' employment. What you're describing is illegal discrimination based on type of work. It's legal community standards enforcement designed to maintain property values and neighborhood character. Professional communities have the right to establish employment expectations. Employment expectations? Karen, you're discriminating against people based on their jobs. I'm maintaining standards that protect everyone's property investment from degradation caused by inappropriate commercial activities. The confrontation continued for an hour, with Karen defending her employment discrimination as community standards, while residents demanded she stop harassing people about their legal work. Because Karen's harassment involved employment discrimination and interference with interstate commerce, food delivery services, the Department of Labor became involved in investigating her activities. Labor Department investigator Janet Walsh contacted me 2 weeks after our community confrontation. Mrs. Santos, we've received complaints about someone interfering with workers' ability to earn a living through legitimate employment. Can you tell me about your son's situation? I explained Karen's campaign against Miguel's delivery job and her demands that he find appropriate professional employment. Miss, Williams has been systematically targeting residents who work in service industries, demanding they quit their jobs or pay penalties. That's illegal interference with workers' rights to lawful employment. Has she targeted other workers? I provided Agent Walsh with information about all the residents Karen had harassed about their jobs. This appears to be systematic employment discrimination based on type of work, which violates federal labor laws. The investigation revealed that Karen's employment harassment was far more extensive than anyone realized. She had been conducting employment background checks on potential residents, rejecting anyone who worked in service industries. She had created elaborate fake violation procedures designed to force service workers to move out of the community. She had been documenting residents' employment and categorizing people as appropriate or inappropriate based on their jobs. Mrs. Santos, Miss Williams has been operating what amounts to an illegal employment screening system for your entire community. But the investigation uncovered something even more disturbing about Karen's motivations. The deeper investigation into Karen's activities revealed that her employment discrimination was connected to a much larger and more sinister scheme. Agent Walsh showed me evidence they had seized from Karen's computer. Communications with property management companies about cleaning up the neighborhood. Research into property values and demographic targeting. Detailed plans for forcing out undesirable residents through employment harassment. Financial documents showing payments from real estate investors. Mrs. Santos, Miss Williams wasn't just discriminating against service workers out of snobbery. She was being paid to force certain residents out so properties could be acquired and gentrified. Paid by whom? A real estate investment group that specializes in buying undervalued properties in communities they can upgrade by changing the resident demographics. The investigation revealed that Karen had been working with investors who wanted to buy houses in Sunset Valley at below-market prices by making the community undesirable to current residents. Her job was to create enough harassment and discrimination to force working-class families to sell their homes and leave. The scheme was elaborate and calculated. Karen would target residents with service industry jobs, claiming their work violated community standards. She would create fake violations and penalties to pressure families financially. When residents couldn't pay fake fees or were exhausted by harassment, they would sell their homes. Karen's real estate partners would buy the properties at discount prices. They would then market the community as exclusively professional to attract higher-income residents. She's been systematically targeting families like yours to force gentrification and property speculation. But then, Agent Walsh revealed an even more shocking discovery that changed everything. Mrs. Santos, there's something else you need to know about Karen Williams. That's not her real name. I stared at Agent Walsh in confusion. What do you mean? Her real name is Karen Thompson. and she's a convicted felon who's been running employment discrimination schemes across 5 different states under various identities. Agent Walsh showed me a thick file containing Karen's criminal history, Arizona, 2019. Convicted of harassment and employment interference targeting hotel workers, sentenced to 2 years probation. Nevada, 2020. Arrested for creating fake business licenses to shut down food trucks, charges dismissed on. Technicality, California, 2021. Convicted of employment discrimination against landscaping workers, fined $25,000. Texas, 2022. Arrested for impersonating labor officials to harass restaurant workers, fled before trial, New Mexico, 2023. Wanted for employment discrimination and fraud targeting gig economy workers. She's been moving from state to state, changing her identity each time, and targeting the same types of workers with increasingly sophisticated schemes. How did she get into our community with a criminal background? She's been using fake references, forged employment history, and stolen identities to pass background checks. The real Karen Williams is a retired teacher in Oregon who has no idea someone has been using her identity. The investigation revealed that Karen was actually part of a much larger criminal network, the Employment Purity Network, a group of criminals who specialized in targeting service industry workers, real estate manipulation schemes, coordinated efforts to force demographic changes for property speculation, identity theft operations, using stolen identities to infiltrate communities and avoid prosecution. Mrs. Santos, your community wasn't randomly targeted. Karen specifically chose Sunset Valley because of its demographics and property values. She's been planning this operation for over a year. But the biggest shock was yet to come. Agent Walsh's investigation revealed that Karen had been stealing identities specifically from people in the communities she targeted. She's been using residents' personal information to create fake violation notices, forge official documents, and even apply for credit cards and loans. The identity theft was systematic and cruel. She had stolen Tom Rodriguez's identity to create fake HOA board resolutions. She used Sarah Mitchell's information to apply for business licenses for her fake enforcement company. She had opened credit cards in Mrs. Patterson's name to fund her harassment campaigns. She even used Miguel's identity to create fake employment records showing he had been fired for violations. She wasn't just discriminating against you, she was stealing from you to fund her. Criminal operations. The financial scope of her identity theft was staggering. $47,000 in fraudulent credit card charges, $23,000 in fake business loans, $15,000 in forged check schemes, $8,000 in fake tax refund claims. She was running a complete identity theft operation disguised as community standards enforcement. But the most disturbing discovery was Karen's long-term plan for Sunset Valley. Agent Walsh showed me documents from Karen's computer that outlined her complete scheme for taking over and profiting from the entire community. Phase 1. Force out undesirable residents through employment harassment. Phase 2. Acquire properties at below-market prices through real estate partners. Phase 3. Use stolen identities to obtain financing for property improvements. Phase 4. Market. Community as exclusively professional with premium pricing. Phase 5. Sell properties at inflated values and move to next target community. Karen had been planning to essentially steal the entire neighborhood through a combination of employment, discrimination, identity theft, and real estate fraud. She projected making over $2 million in profit from your community alone, then replicating the scheme in similar neighborhoods across the Southwest. The investigation also revealed that Karen had been grooming other criminals to replicate her methods, online training courses for community demographic management, detailed manuals for employment-based harassment techniques, networks of identity thieves and real estate fraudsters, plans to franchise her operation to other states. She wasn't just a discriminatory neighbor. She was the leader of a criminal enterprise targeting working families across multiple states. This revelation transformed the case from simple employment discrimination to organized crime with federal implications. Agent Walsh's investigation revealed that Karen had been creating illegal employment blacklists designed to prevent targeted residents from finding work. Mrs. Santos, we found evidence that Miss Williams has been contacting employers to try to get your son and other residents fired from their jobs. Fired? How? She's been calling DoorDash, Uber Eats, and other companies claiming that certain drivers were violating community standards and should be terminated. The evidence showed that Karen had made dozens of calls to gig economy companies claiming that drivers from Sunset Valley were operating illegally from residential properties, violating local zoning laws, creating safety hazards, representing community standards, violations. She was trying to get residents fired from their jobs while simultaneously pressuring them to quit through fake HOA violations. But Karen's employment interference went even further. She had been contacting traditional employers as well, calling David Chen's school district claiming his ride-sharing violated teacher conduct codes, reporting Sarah Mitchell to her nursing program for unprofessional commercial activities. Filing complaints with Mrs. Patterson's pension administrator about unauthorized business activities. She was attempting to destroy people's careers and financial stability to force them out of the community. The investigation also revealed that Karen had been sharing residents' employment information with her real estate partners, who used it to target specific families for acquisition offers. When she identified families with service industry income, she would flag them as transition candidates for forced sales. Karen was arrested on a Wednesday morning as she was conducting another employment compliance inspection of our neighborhood. Miguel and I watched from our window as federal agents and local police surrounded her house. But what happened next was even more dramatic than we expected. When they confronted her with evidence of her employment discrimination scheme and her true identity, Karen's reaction was immediate and explosive. "This is persecution of community standards professionals!" she screamed at a volume that could be heard throughout the neighborhood. I was protecting property values from service industry degradation. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for employment discrimination, identity theft, and fraud," Agent Walsh told her. "We also know your real name is Karen Thompson, not Karen Williams." The moment Agent Walsh revealed her true identity, Karen's demeanor completely changed. Her fake professional composure cracked, revealing something much more sinister underneath. "You don't know anything about my identity. I am Karen Williams, Community Standards Coordinator. Ma'am, we have records showing you've been using stolen identities across 5 states while running employment discrimination schemes. That's a lie created by the service industry conspiracy. They're trying to frame me because I exposed their contamination of professional communities." As they approached her with handcuffs, Karen actually tried to run back into her house, apparently thinking she could destroy evidence of her identity. "Theft! You can't arrest me! I have diplomatic immunity as a community standards professional. Ma'am, no such immunity exists. It absolutely exists! I'm protected by the Professional Community Protection Act that authorizes employment standards enforcement." When they finally caught up with her, Karen launched into the most delusional rant anyone in the neighborhood had ever witnessed. A combination of employment discrimination and complete identity denial. "I am Karen Williams. I have never been anywhere else. These employment discrimination charges are fabricated by gig economy corporations. Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent. I don't want to remain silent. Everyone needs to understand that I'm being framed by service industry workers who want to destroy community standards." As they put her in handcuffs, Karen's voice reached a fever pitch as she tried to maintain both her fake identity and her employment discrimination justifications. "Karen Thompson doesn't exist. I'm Karen Williams. I've never committed identity theft. I've only enforced employment standards. Ma'am, please calm down. I will not calm down when I'm being falsely accused. Food delivery drivers and ride-share operators have conspired to frame me because I exposed their community contamination." The neighbors who had gathered to watch were stunned by Karen's complete mental breakdown and her desperate attempts to deny her criminal history. "This is all a service industry conspiracy. Miguel Santos and his delivery job friends have created fake evidence to destroy community standards enforcement. Ma'am, please get in the vehicle. Get your hands off me. I'm Karen Williams. I've never stolen anyone's identity. I've only protected professional communities from gig economy invasion. As they finally got her into the federal vehicle, Karen pressed her face against the window and continued her identity denial rant. I am not Karen Thompson. I've never been to Arizona or Nevada or California. This is all fake news created by service workers. But then, in a moment of complete psychological collapse, Karen accidentally revealed the truth. Fine! Maybe I've had to use different names to protect myself from service industry retaliation. But everything I've done has been to save professional communities from working-class contamination. The federal vehicle was pulling away, but Karen's voice could still be heard through the windows as she finally admitted her true identity while still justifying her crimes. Karen Thompson was protecting communities. Karen Williams was protecting communities. Whatever name I use, I'm saving neighborhoods from employment degradation. Miguel turned to me in shock. Mom, she's been lying about everything. Even her name was fake. Everything about her was fake, except her hatred for people who work honest jobs. After Karen's arrest, the investigation revealed the full scope of her employment discrimination scheme and its impact on Sunset Valley residents. 23 families had been targeted for employment harassment based on their jobs. 12 families with gig economy workers, food delivery, ride-sharing, freelance services. 6 families with service industry employment, retail, restaurant, healthcare support. 5 families with home-based businesses, crafts, consulting, online sales. Karen had classified every household by employment type and was systematically targeting anyone she considered unprofessional, Agent Walsh explained. During a community meeting, the financial impact of her scheme was staggering. $18,000 in fake violation penalties collected from residents, $45,000 in lost income from residents who quit jobs due to harassment, $8,000 in legal fees paid by families defending against fake violations, estimated $200,000 in property value manipulation through forced sales. But beyond the financial damage, Karen's discrimination had created deep emotional trauma for targeted families. She made me ashamed of honest work that I'm proud of, said David Chen. I started hiding the fact that I drive for Lyft because I was afraid of more harassment. Sarah Mitchell described how Karen's interference had nearly cost her nursing school placement. She called my program claiming my Instacart work showed unprofessional behavior. I had to provide documentation proving my job was completely legitimate. Mrs. Patterson had been so stressed by Karen's craft business harassment that she had stopped selling her handmade items entirely. She made me feel like a criminal for supplementing my fixed income with honest work. The community began implementing changes to prevent future employment discrimination, clear HOA policies prohibiting employment-based harassment. Educational programs about workers' rights and legal employment, reporting procedures for discrimination complaints, community support networks for targeted families. Most importantly, residents who had been forced to quit jobs due to Karen's harassment were able to return to their employment without fear. Karen's trial began 10 months later and became a landmark case in employment discrimination law. The federal courthouse was packed with labor rights advocates, affected residents, and community leaders who wanted to see justice served. The prosecution, led by Assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Martinez, presented overwhelming evidence of Karen's systematic employment discrimination. Recorded phone calls where Karen told employers their workers were inappropriate for the community documents showing her employment. Screening criteria and resident classifications. Financial records proving her connection to real estate speculation schemes. Testimony from dozens of affected workers and families. The most damning evidence was Karen's own documentation. The fake community standards manuals, employment violation forms, and detailed plans for demographic improvement through job discrimination. Karen's defense attorney tried to argue that she had genuinely believed she was protecting property values and community standards. But when Karen insisted on testifying in her own defense, She provided a window into her complete lack of understanding about employment rights and her continuing classist delusions. Miss Martinez, did you target residents based on their employment? The prosecutor asked. I implemented community standards that ensure appropriate professional demographics consistent with property value protection. You targeted people who worked food delivery and ride-sharing jobs? I identified residents whose employment represented threats to community character and property values through service industry contamination. Service industry contamination? Yes! Gig economy workers, food delivery drivers, and service industry employees represent temporary, low-skill employment that damages professional community reputation. The prosecutor showed the jury examples of Karen's employment harassment. Miss Williams, you demanded that a college student quit his food delivery job. How was that protecting the community? Food delivery work attracts constant commercial traffic, creates safety hazards, and signals that the community accepts lower-class employment that damages property values. Lower-class employment? Employment that requires no education, training, Oregon professional development. Professional communities should maintain employment standards that protect property investments. The judge warned Karen about her volume, but she continued her discriminatory rant. Sunset Valley is designed for professional residents with stable, dignified employment. Service industry workers belong in communities designed for temporary, low-income demographics. Miss E. Williams, are you saying that certain types of legal work disqualify people from living in your community? I'm saying that professional communities have the right to maintain employment standards that protect property values from working class. Degradation. The jury was visibly disgusted by Karen's open display of employment discrimination and class-based hatred. These people choose temporary, unstable gig work instead of developing professional careers. Someone has to maintain community standards that encourage appropriate employment. Miss Williams, you tried to get residents fired from their legal jobs. I reported violations of community employment standards to appropriate authorities. Service industry work has no place in professional neighborhoods. Karen's testimony continued for 3 days, and she never showed any acknowledgement that discriminating against people based on their jobs was illegal or wrong. Professional communities require professional residents with professional employment. My enforcement actions protected property values from service industry contamination. The jury deliberated for only 90 minutes before finding Karen guilty on all federal charges. Employment discrimination, multiple counts, identity theft, federal charges, wire fraud for fake violation schemes, organized crime conspiracy civil rights violations for economic discrimination, impersonation of federal officials, credit card fraud, real estate fraud. When the verdict was read, Karen's reaction was her final explosive display of employment discrimination combined with complete identity denial. This is a conspiracy by the gig economy industry and identity theft victims. You're criminalizing community standards that protect property values. Federal Judge Michael Rodriguez was clearly disgusted by the scope and cruelty of Karen's multi-state criminal enterprise. Miss Thompson, operating under multiple stolen identities, you systematically targeted hard-working families across 5 states based solely on their employment, attempting to destroy their livelihoods while stealing their identities and homes. Your criminal organization represents a profound threat to American values of economic opportunity and community safety. I am Karen Williams. I have never stolen anyone's identity. This is all fabricated by service industry conspirators. Judge Rodriguez continued, the evidence shows you operated a sophisticated criminal enterprise that combined employment discrimination with identity theft and real estate fraud. You targeted the most vulnerable families, working parents, college students, and elderly residents, causing immeasurable harm to dozens of communities. This court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison without possibility of parole, followed by 5 years of supervised release. You are ordered to pay full restitution of $347,000 to your victims across all 5 states. You are permanently banned from any community management positions and from using false identities. Karen's final statement to the court revealed her complete psychological break from reality. This sentence will encourage service industry. Contamination and identity theft across America. I am Karen Williams. I've never been Karen Thompson. Professional communities will collapse because this court refused to protect employment standards. Even as she was led away in shackles, Karen continued her dual delusion. When property values crash from gig worker invasion, remember that Karen Williams tried to save professional neighborhoods. After Karen's conviction, Miguel was able to return to his delivery job without harassment or fear. The stress of Karen's employment discrimination and identity theft had affected his grades and emotional well-being, but with proper support, he recovered and continued excelling in school. Mom, I learned that some people will try to destroy your life just because they hate honest work, Miguel told me. But I'm proud of earning money to pay for college, and I won't let criminals make me feel ashamed of that. The community implemented new protections for residents' employment rights and created advanced security systems to prevent identity theft and infiltration by criminal organizations. Karen served 12 years of her 15-year sentence before dying in federal prison from complications related to her untreated mental illness. According to prison records, she had maintained her delusions about both her identity and employment discrimination until the end, insisting she was Karen Williams protecting professional communities. Her criminal network was completely dismantled. By federal authorities, 23 co-conspirators arrested across multiple states, $2.8 million in stolen property, and fraudulent gains recovered. 156 identity theft victims provided restitution and support. New federal task force created to prevent employment-based community infiltration schemes. The real Karen Williams, the retired teacher whose identity had been stolen, filed a successful lawsuit against the prison system for allowing the use of her name and was awarded $50,000 in damages. Her real estate investor partners were prosecuted for conspiracy and fraud, with several receiving sentences of 12 years for their roles in the gentrification schemes. According to final FBI reports, the criminal organization had targeted over 40 communities across the Southwest, causing an estimated $15 million in damages through employment discrimination, identity theft, and real estate fraud.